Hello, I'm Claire Bridges. I'm a business coach at the Louisville Small Business Development Center. And today, welcome to Toolkit Tuesday. We will be talking about how to open a food truck in Louisville. And we've got a great guest from the health department here in town to go over all of the rules, regulations, process for the whole thing. I'd like to introduce Samantha Stinson from the Department of Health and Wellness. Welcome, Samantha.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So let me get my screen shared.
Right. And as Samantha's sharing her screen, if you want to enter your name and where you're watching from in the chat, we love to see where everyone's tuning in from. All right, go ahead, Samantha, whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right. So first, I just wanted to start off with just a little bit about me. So my name is Samantha Stinson. I am a registered sanitarian with the state of Kentucky, and I am an environmental health specialist with our Louisville Metro Public Health and Wellness Department. I work directly in our food safety and protection program. So our mission for our food safety program is to protect the public health by preventing foodborne illnesses. So we pretty much inspect anything from schools, nursing homes, anything that has food. So schools, nursing homes, daycares, restaurants, and then what we're going to be talking about today, food trucks. So I was born and raised here in Louisville, Kentucky. I have a degree in public health from the University of Louisville. And then just a fun fact, I have a 3-year-old boxer named Tyson, who you might end up seeing in the background here. And you might hear him barking. Sorry about that. Right now he's sleeping. So I'm working from home today. Our offices are under construction, so we're doing work from home right now. There will be a few questions throughout the presentation, so feel free to kind of write your responses in the chat box if you want, and we can do questions at the end if you have any questions throughout the presentation. Feel free to put those questions in the chat box, but we'll try to address those at the end because it might be answered throughout this presentation.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. All right, so we're coming up on our first question. What is the biggest mistake food truck operators frequently make when designing their truck? So if you have a response, if you want to throw something out there, feel free to put that in the chat box, and I'll just give you a couple seconds. Plumbing, yep. So you want to make sure that your plumbing is done properly by a master plumber. We want to make sure you have the right plumbing equipment in there. I would say the biggest mistake, right, equipment, menu. I think the biggest mistake is just not submitting plans to the health department before you start building a food truck or before purchasing a food truck. Because if you start building a food truck and you haven't submitted plans to us for approval, then you've already started building your food truck, you've done all this work, you spent all this money, and then if we come back and tell you, well, now you need to add a hand sink or you need to add some equipment that you don't already have, then that could end up costing you a lot of money to fix. And that's what we want to try to avoid. So hopefully after this presentation, you will really understand, you'll have the knowledge to open a food truck and to properly operate one. Okay, so I'm just going to go over some objectives that we are going to focus on today. First, we're going to talk about the types of permits. So we have 3 different types of permits that you can get with us. We're going to talk about the requirements for those permits. We will discuss the permitting process, so how to submit plans, what documents should be submitted to us. We're going to talk about our certified food manager program. That you have to have someone that's certified that has knowledge on your food truck. We're going to discuss some of the critical violations. So these are going to be violations, the more important ones that can directly cause a foodborne illness and could also cause you to fail an inspection. We're going to talk about our mobile waste disposal sites. We have several of those around Louisville that you can pour your wastewater tanks into. And then we're going to end with our information on obtaining a vending permit and ID. So through the codes and regulations, you're required to have a vending permit. That's not done through the health department. It is done through the codes and regulations office. So we like to give you that information so that you have it whenever you get to that step. And then we'll end with just some contacts of the different departments that you can reach out to if you have any questions. All right, so we're going to talk about the 3 different types of permits that we have. So our first one is going to be the self-contained food service mobile unit. This is going to be your most popular mobile unit. This type of permit allows you pretty much to serve any type of food. Most of the food trucks that you see around town are probably going to have this permit. Our second type of permit is a restricted food concession. Now this permit, you can only prepare certain items. You can't do a whole lot of food prep, food cooking. There's only certain restricted food items that you are allowed to sell with this permit. And then our last permit is going to be the mobile retail permit. This type of permit, and we're going to go into more detail about each of these permits, but I just wanted to give you an overview of the 3 types. The mobile retail permit, that is going to be the most popular example is going to be like an ice cream truck that just sells prepackaged items. They're not doing any cooking. They're not doing any preparing of food. They're just selling something that's already been prepackaged. So with all of these permits, you have a local and you have a state permit. So the local permit allows you to operate anywhere in Jefferson County. The state permit allows you to operate anywhere in the state of Kentucky. Now, if you go out of Jefferson County and you say go into Oldham County or you go into Bullitt County, you may have to contact that local health department and see if you're required to pay a fee to that local health department. But with this permit, you can't operate statewide. Just check with that local health department of whatever county that you're in. Now, with all of these permits, all food must be prepared on site in the food truck unless you have a commissary kitchen. We're going to talk about commissary kitchens here in a little while, but basically it's a shared kitchen where you can prepare large amounts of food. You can do batch cooking. Typically, a food truck, you can only do one type of food process, which means you can cook your food, hot hold it, and serve it. But you can't do any reheating of food. You can't cook a large batch of rice, cool it down, and then reheat it for later use. That can only be done in a commissary kitchen. You also, I just want to mention, you can't prepare any food at home. Everything has to be done on the food truck. And then the last requirement is that you, wherever you are operating, you need to be close to restrooms. So typically, if you are set up kind of near some businesses, they're going to have restrooms. I would just check with those businesses and make sure that they will allow your customers to use the restroom there if needed. And then on here, you can kind of see how much each permit is. So for the self-contained mobile unit, it's going to be $280 a year. For the restricted food concession, it's $150 a year. And for the mobile retail permit, it's $110 a year. And those are just renewed every year. You just go online, you pay a fee, and then you're renewed for the next year. And I did want to mention that our rates are not prorated. So if you, so we go from January to December for your permit fee. If you open your food truck in November, you're still going to be paying the same amount of money that you would have been paying if you were to open in January. So if you open in November, you're still going to be paying that $280, even if you're only serving for a couple months. So sometimes if an operator wants to open in December, sometimes I let them know that because it might make a decision on, well, maybe we just wait until January. That way we're not paying double the price for just 1 month. All right, so we are going to talk about our first type of permit. This is going to be the most popular permit. This is the one that requires plumbing. It requires a lot more because of the risk that you're preparing food on it. So we call this permit the self-contained mobile unit. Everything is self-contained inside. This permit is you are allowed to prepare any type of food, but again, it's only one process. So you cook it on the food truck, you hot hold it, and then you serve it. No reheating, no batch cooking where you're cooking a bunch of food and saving it for later. Now, the requirements so this picture is one of our active food truck holders. This is Jay's Mexican Street Bites. And inside, I'll have some pictures in a minute, but you're required to have a hand sink, a 3-compartment sink so that you can wash your dishes. And then you have your fresh water tank that holds your clean potable water, and you'll have a sewage tank that holds all your sewage water. Now, this type of permit is inspected twice a year. So every 6 months, we come out and we do an inspection on the food truck. Now, with food trucks, it's very difficult for us to find them because they are constantly moving around to different locations. They work different hours. Some days they're open, some days they're not. So if we are driving down the side of the road and we just happen to see you set up, we will probably stop and do an inspection. If we can't find you and you're due for an inspection, typically we will reach out to you either by email or by phone number and kind of talk to you and ask you where you're going to be at in the next couple of weeks, or if you have any events that you're going to. That way we can come out and do your inspection. With this type of permit, you will receive a grade that is posted for the customers to see. So this is our A, B, or C placard. Those are posted. I'll talk a little bit more about how we do our ABC placard system because it can be a little bit confusing. But for a self-contained mobile unit, you will have a grade posted every 6 months. And every time we come out to do an inspection, that placard will change to your new score. With this permit, you will have plumbing because you will have the hand sink, you will have the 3-compartment sink. It has to be approved by the Division of Plumbing. So you have to have a master plumber that does all your plumbing work. You can't just do your plumbing yourself. It has to be a certified master plumber. And when you submit your plans, you submit those plans to us, and we send those over to the Division of Plumbing for approval. I'll show you a picture a little bit later, but you'll have a green approved plumbing sticker on your plumbing once it's been approved. Now, the last requirement with this type of permit is that you are required to have a certified food manager. So this is a certificate that is only one person that's operating the food truck has to have, but somebody on the truck has to have this during any time you're operating. So if the one person that you have certified is sick that day, then someone else that's operating the food truck has to have their certificate. And I'll talk a little bit later about our certified food manager program. You can just get certified online, or you can do it in person. And for our program, it's only $35 to get. And this certificate basically just shows us that you have some kind of food safety knowledge. By taking that course, you learn all about. I really recommend anyone that kind of works in the food industry to get this certificate because it's really good information. It's really good information that just anyone can have. You don't have to be an actual manager to get it. You can just be an employee. But it's just really good information to have a lot of people have it so that they understand the food code and they understand what can cause a foodborne illness. Okay, so now we have some pictures. So these are the pictures inside of that Jay's Mexican Street Bites food truck. This is the pictures I took from when I did their opening inspection. When you do an opening inspection, we're mainly just looking for equipment. We're making sure that the floor plan matches, and we're making sure, you know, you have hot and cold water, your coolers are at the right temperature. So when we do your opening inspection, which is your very first inspection, it's done at the health department. You bring your trailer to us, your truck or trailer to us at the health department, and we take a look at everything. So you don't actually have to be preparing food for the initial opening, but for your future inspections will come when you're actually open and preparing food. So as you can see in this first picture, this is just kind of showing the hot and cold holding units inside. So they have a couple coolers here where they keep their cold food. So your coolers need to be below 41 degrees. And then on this side, they have a grill top where they cook their food, and they have some steam table to hot hold their food. Now in the middle, they have this generator. So you have to have electricity, obviously, that way your equipment is on and holding proper temperature. So you can either use a generator, which is what they're using, or if you are close to a business that has an outlet, and they allow you to plug up to them, then that is allowed as well. So either plugging up to an outlet or having some kind of generator. In the middle here, we have our hand sink. So hand sink has to have splash guards. That's going to be these little shields on the side so that when you wash your hands, that water isn't splashing all over clean dishes or food. You have to have soap and paper towels at your hand sink so you can wash your hands, and you have to have cold and hot water. We also require this little hand washing sign because hand sinks are only for hand washing. You can't use them to pour any liquids down the drain or anything like that. They're just for hand washing. And typically most food trucks are only going to have one hand sink just because they're so small. That's all you really need. Whereas a big brick and mortar place would be required to have more hand sinks. And then this last picture kind of shows the 3-compartment sink. So this is where you're going to wash your dishes. You'll wash in the first sink with detergent. In the middle sink, you will rinse with just clean potable water. And then in the third sink, you will sanitize with some kind of sanitizer. So our most popular sanitizer is going to be bleach, just because it's cheap, it's easy to buy, everyone carries it. But there are some other sanitizers out there that are an approved chemical to use. Bleach is just our most common one. So you would sanitize in that third sink. And then underneath the 3-compartment sink, it's a little bit hard to see, but that is going to be the freshwater tank. So that's where all your clean potable water is going to be stored. You also are going to have a wastewater tank. Typically, these might be stored underneath the food truck or hidden somewhere where you can't really see. So I don't actually have a picture of the gray water tank, but you would have that as well. So again, with the wastewater tank, your waste tank has to be 50% larger than your potable water tank. And that's because we want to make sure it's not going to overflow. You know, when you're all your water in your freshwater tank has to be able to fit, plus some from the debris and other liquids that might be going down the drain. Now, this is a picture of an air curtain. You are required to have some kind of screening or air curtains to prevent the entrance of flying insects. So this is an air curtain. It's basically blowing out air so that flies can't fly inward. You can also just have screens. A lot of people have screens on their like main doors. In the summer months, it gets super hot, especially inside of food trucks. And so having that door open is allowed as long as you have that screen there to prevent anything from coming inside. And then you're lastly required to have a fire extinguisher. That is per the fire marshal. So just have some kind of fire extinguisher inside so that, if it's needed, you'll have it there. Okay, so we're off to another question. Feel free to put this in the chat box. I'll have to pull up the chat box, but what documents are facilities in Louisville required to display and where the public can view it? So feel free to throw that in the chat box. Yes, so Ashley says permit, Tatiana health score permits. So that's correct. So you are required to post both of your permits in your food truck. So you're going to have a local permit and a state permit, like I mentioned before. You have to have those printed off and posted in your food truck for customers to see, because they need to see that you have a permit. You also are required to have your grading score. So this is going to be your A, B, or C placard. You are required to have that in the window for customers to view, because you want customers to be able to see what your rating was on your what you got on your score, so they can kind of make the decision, oh, wow, this place is really clean, like I'm going to eat here. Or if maybe you don't have a very good score, then people can make that decision for themselves whether they want to eat from there or not. Tatiana also mentioned the food handler certificate. So yes, it is actually, well, it's not a requirement to have that posted, but I highly suggest that you do. It makes it a lot easier that when we come in to do your inspection, that we easily see your certified food manager certificate hanging up. That way you're not trying to find it while we're there. But you don't have to have it posted. You just have to be able to show it to us. So if you want to keep it in a binder somewhere, that's okay. If you want to, some people have a picture of it on their phone, and as long as you can show it to us while we're there, then that's acceptable. All right, so now we are going to get into our placard system. I wanted to go over this because sometimes it can be confusing for people on how we grade our inspections. So I'm sure you've seen these around town. They're everywhere. Any place that has food is probably going to have a placard hanging up somewhere. And they should be either at the front entrance or in a window at the front for everyone to see. It can't be hidden in the back somewhere. So this is what they look like. So this big box is going to be what the score is. And then the two little boxes underneath, that actually is going to show your past scores. So whenever you're looking at a placard, you can easily see what their past histories was and see like that they've had a good history in the past, or maybe they didn't have such a good history in the past. And so that is all there for you to see. Now, our grading system is also, all of our inspections and scores are also posted online. So if you maybe want to look up a restaurant and see what their score was, you can go online and look that up ahead of time, instead of maybe just getting there and seeing that, oh, they have a bad score, maybe I don't want to eat from here. So this is going to be our best score, the best placard that you can get is the A. This means that you have passed inspection with a score of an 85% to 100%, and you had no priority violations. So a priority violation are going to be our violations that directly cause a foodborne illness. So we have priority violations and we have non-priority violations. The priority ones directly cause the foodborne illness. So that could be anything from not washing your hands after going to the restroom, not cooking your chicken to 165 degrees. Those directly cause foodborne illnesses. You cannot get an A placard if you are in violation of those. Some of our non-priority violations would be just maybe cleanliness. You know, if you have a little bit of dust on the wall, it's still a violation, but you wouldn't necessarily make someone sick from that violation. So this placard is going to be posted for 6 months. Every time we do a regular inspection, we would change the placard out, but it has to be posted for 6 months. And once we hang this placard up, you cannot take it down, you cannot move it, and you cannot conceal it in any way. We don't really have that problem with the A placard because everybody wants an A and they want to show it off. Whereas some of our B or our C placards, some people will try to take it down because they're embarrassed, or they'll try to hide it in some way, and that is not allowed. Okay, so getting into our B placard and our C placard is a little confusing on it's very confusing on how we grade for those. So I'm going to try to explain it to the best that I can. So a B placard is a placard that we place if a facility is closed for an imminent health hazard. So an imminent health hazard is going to be a significant threat or a danger to the public health. And I kind of posted some of the reasons that we could close you down for an imminent health hazard. I listed them here. The reasons that we could close you down is not having any water. So if your freshwater tank runs out of water mid-shift, we come and inspect and you have no water, we would close you down because you have to be able to wash your hands, you have to be able to wash your dishes. Having no electricity. So if your generator goes out or a breaker blows or something like that, and you have no electricity, you cannot operate, and we can close you down if you are operating. We can close you if you have a sewage backed up. So if your sewage tank is overflowing for any reason, maybe you forgot to dump it and it starts overflowing, we would close you down for that. And then for a rodent infestation. So if your food truck is covered in cockroaches or bugs, we can close you down for that. So got to keep it clean. You got to keep pests out. And then another reason that we can close you is if you score below a 60% on a regular inspection. So I will say it's very hard to score below a 60% unless you've already kind of committed one of these violations of having like no water, no electricity. If you more than likely you have to kind of not be in compliance with one of those to really get below a 60%. So another reason that we would post a B placard is if you have failed 2 regular inspections in a row. And this B placard is going to always be posted for 6 months. So if we hang up a B placard, you're going to have it for 6 months. Let me grab some water. All right, so let me talk about the C placard, and then the B placard might make a little bit more sense to you because sometimes I always tell people that a B placard's actually kind of worse than a C placard, and that just doesn't make sense. A B should be better than a C, but in our case, it's really not. So they're both pretty bad. But I always tell people the B is a little bit worse. So let me talk about the C placard, and then you might kind of understand a little bit better. Okay, so here's what our C placard looks like. So our C placard is, we place this if you fail an inspection due to 1 or more priority violations or score below an 85%. So if you are priority violations, those are the violations that directly cause a foodborne illness. If you have one of those not in compliance, like you have no hot water or you're seen not washing your hands, then that would be a priority violation and you automatically fail your inspection. So when you fail your inspection, we place the C placard up on your window. This C placard is only posted for 7 to 10 days. You will never see a C hanging up for longer than 10 days. Now, after 7 to 10 days, so say I do an inspection and you fail, I post the C placard. In 7 to 10 days, I will come back and I will do a re-inspection. If you corrected everything that was previously marked, then you have the opportunity to earn your A back. So I come back 7 to 10 days later and you pass the inspection, you corrected everything, then I take down your C placard and I hang your A placard back up. So then your A placard is up for 6 months, whereas your C placard's only up for 7 to 10 days. Now, kind of going back to the B placard, if I fail you and you earned your A back, 6 months later, so you have your A placard up for 6 months. I come back 6 months later, you fail again. Then I post the C placard up again for another 7 to 10 days. And when I come back in 7 to 10 days, if you corrected everything, then the highest score you're allowed to earn because you failed 2 regular inspections in a row is a B. So that's why sometimes you will see a B hanging up, but their score is 100%. And you're like, well, that doesn't make sense. How do they have a 100% score, but they have a B? And that's because they failed 2 inspections in a row. So kind of going back, the B placard is if you failed 2 in a row and is up for 6 months. A C placard is up if they failed the inspection, but they have the opportunity to earn their A back. And then kind of the same thing with the closure. If we have to close you down, we will initially post the C placard, and in 7 to 10 days, when we come back, as long as you corrected everything, the highest score you can earn is a B. So we'll take the C down and then we'll hang a B up for 6 months. But then after that 6 months, you do have the opportunity to kind of earn your A back. So I hope that makes a little bit more sense. That's why I always say a B is a little bit worse, because a B showed you failed 2, a C you kind of failed 1. And so it can be a little bit confusing, especially for customers who don't really understand how our placard system works. And I just wanted to note on the C placard, so we'll post the score here in the square box, and then we'll also mark what was wrong and what the priority violations were that caused you to fail that inspection. So whether it was food out of temp, equipment not sanitized, toxic items not stored properly, we will mark that down here so that your customers can see what was wrong. Okay, so now we're going to go, we have another question here. What are high risk versus low risk foods? And what are some examples? So if you want to throw some answers in the chat, then I will try to follow those. Salad. So salad's going to be a high risk food. Tuna, yes, high risk. Anything else? Cream cheese, yep, that's a high risk. Low risk would be prepackaged, could be. So our high risk foods are going to be certain types of food that allow the quick growth of bacteria because they are generally really moist and high in nutrients. So if you have a high water activity in this food, or if you have a high pH, more than likely bacteria can grow in your food. So examples are going to be dairy products, yes, milk, cheese, meat, poultry, seafood, cooked rice, cooked pasta, prepared salads, eggs, or anything, or egg products, and then any kind of ready-to-eat item that have any of those ingredients in it. Those are going to be high risk because they support the growth of bacteria. Now, our low risk foods are going to be less able to support the growth of bacteria. Typically, these are going to be shelf stable items. So dry goods, cereal, spices, biscuits, any baked goods without cream cheese filling. These are all going to be low risk foods that don't really support the growth of bacteria. So we're not as concerned about them. And typically you don't have to keep them refrigerated. You can keep them out at room temperature and no bacteria is going to grow. So I wanted to put that on there because our second type of permit is going to be a restricted food cart. And this type of permit, you're only allowed to prepare certain low risk items. Now, the picture I have here in the most common example of type of permits that we have are going to be a hot dog cart. So this hot dog cart, they can only prepare hot dogs, basically any kind of meat that's similar to that is a pre-cooked item. They can heat those up and serve those from a hot dog cart. Now since it's such a low risk type of food, it is only inspected once a year. So only once we don't come out twice a year, we come out once a year, and we do an inspection. Now, there is no placard required for this type of permit. So we do not give you an A, B, or C placard. We basically just give you a score and we give you a report. You are more than welcome to post that report if you just want your customers to see it. But it's also online for people to look up if they want to. With this type of permit, most of the time you're not going to have any plumbing, but if you do have plumbing, it does have to be approved by the Division of Plumbing. If you don't have any plumbing, then you have to have some kind of system to wash your hands, and some kind of 3-bucket system to wash your dishes. And I have an example here in a couple slides to show you what that can look like. But you still have to be able to wash your hands. Typically with the hot dog cart or any kind of restricted food cart, you're not really going to have that many dishes because you're not doing a whole lot of cooking and preparing of food. So you may just have a few utensils, a few pots and a few pans that you might have to wash. And so that can be done in a 3-bucket wash, rinse, sanitize setup. Okay, so I wanted to put on here the types of food that you can do with the restricted food service permit. So any pre-cooked or commercially processed hot dogs, frankfurters, and any similar meats such as bratwurst or Italian sausage, those can be done with this type of permit. You can do roasted peanuts, almonds, pecans, and walnuts without the shell. You can do any prepackaged, commercially processed snack foods, shelf-stable, prepackaged baked goods. So you can sell bags of chips, anything that's shelf-stable, anything that's commercially processed and prepackaged. You can do shaved ice, flavored ice, and snow cones, but you have to use commercially prepared flavor. You can't make your own flavor. You just have to buy this store-bought flavoring. And once that flavoring is empty, you just have to replace it with a new container. And then you can also do prepackaged ice cream and popsicles. And then you can do prepackaged sandwiches, nacho chips and cheese, pork rinds, and cotton candy. So all of these types of food can be done under this permit, but these are the only items allowed because they are much lower risk than some of the other foods. So here is a temporary sanitation setup. So as I said before, most of those food carts probably aren't going to have plumbing, but you still have to be able to wash your hands and you still have to be able to wash your dishes. So this is an example of a hand wash station. So it's basically just a spigot of potable clean water. They have soap, they should have paper towels, and then you have like a catch basin to kind of catch that water as you wash your hands. The water doesn't have to be hot, it just has to be clean potable water. This is going to be how you should set up to wash your dishes. So basically you just have 3 buckets so that you can wash, rinse, and sanitize. In the first bucket, you would wash with detergent. In the middle bucket, you would just rinse the dish off with clean potable water. And then in the third bucket, you would sanitize with bleach. So in this picture, they are using bleach, and it's 1 tablespoon of bleach per a gallon of water. And you just dip your dish in there and then lay it out to air dry. So you can't towel dry any of your dishes, they have to be air dried. So if you have no plumbing for this type of permit only, the restricted food cart, you can set up like this. So we're going to talk about some of the requirements of food safety equipment. So this is going to be for both the restricted food cart and the self-contained mobile unit. So you obviously have to have sanitizer and dish soap to wash your dishes. So as I said, chlorine is going to be the most common one. This picture actually shows quaternary ammonium. They're little tablets that you can put in with warm water to wash your dishes. So you also have to have the correct test strips that correspond to the sanitizer that you're using. So if you're using chlorine or bleach, you have to have chlorine test strips. Those are going to be more, those are going to be purple. I'm sure you may have seen them around, but you just want to make sure you have the correct test strips. And for washing dishes, it's going to be 50 to 100 parts per million. Now the picture here, the quaternary ammonium, these are the test strips that correspond with that. So every time you make a bucket of sanitizer or you set up your sanitizing sink, you want to test it with a test strip so that you can easily see if it's at the right concentration, because you don't want it to be too strong where it could potentially get you sick, and you don't want it to be too weak where it's not killing any of the bacteria. So for the quaternary ammonium, these are just the two most common sanitizers that are used, but there's many more out there. But for the quaternary ammonium, it's going to be 200 to 400 parts per million. And as you can see in the picture, they tested it and it's right in that range. So it is safe to use to wash your dishes. Some other equipment that's needed is that you have to have a metal stem thermometer for both types of permits. So you need to be able to check temperatures of food. Cold food needs to be below 41 degrees. Hot food needs to be above 135 degrees. If you have any refrigeration units or if you have any hot holding units, you have to have a thermometer inside of those so that you can easily see what the temperature is in there. And then again, you have to have soap and paper towels to wash your hands. You should be wearing some kind of hair restraint to keep your hair back when you're preparing food. And then you have to have gloves or a utensil to prevent bare hand contact with ready to eat food. So if you have to wear gloves, you can't touch anything ready to eat with your bare hand. The only thing that you can touch with your bare hand is maybe raw meat that you're going to be cooking. And when you cook it, it's going to kill any of that bacteria on there. But once that food item has been cooked, you cannot touch it with your bare hands. You either have to wear gloves or you can use a utensil like tongs, or you can use some kind of barrier in between, like tissue paper. A lot of like bakeries will use tissue paper to pick up baked goods, and that is acceptable. All right, so now we are at our last type of permit. This is going to be our retail permit. The example I have here is Kroger. They have a food truck where it's like a grocery store. So you can walk inside. They set up around town in areas that might be a food desert or in areas where it's harder for people to get to the grocery store, and people can come in the food truck and grocery shop. So they're not doing any preparing of food. They're not cooking anything. It's pretty much cold food, prepackaged food that's kept at proper temperature. Because the risk isn't that high, this is only risk inspected once a year as well. They also are not required to post any type of placard. They do not have an A, B, or C posted. But again, you can look it up online and see what their scores are. This is going to be prepackaged items only. And they're not going to have any plumbing. You don't even have to have a hand sink for this. You pretty much just have coolers or refrigeration units to keep food cold. And you're going to have thermometers in there to maintain the temperature. So this is a very simple, another example would be like an ice cream truck. They buy prepackaged retail ice cream or popsicles and they retail sell them to their customers. So not a whole lot is done here. And no plumbing, they should have no plumbing. So you don't have to go through the division of plumbing to get any plumbing. This is a lot easier type of permit. All right, so now we are going to get into the steps to permit a food truck. So what needs to be, we're going to talk about what needs to be submitted to the health department for approval, how long that might take, and everything that goes into that. So this is going to be the very, very first thing that you're going to do if you want to open a food truck. So if you have decided that you want to start building a food truck, or that you have purchased a food truck that's already built, the first thing you have to do is submit plans to our plan review team. So there's a couple of different ways you can do that. You can either email it to our plan review team at this email address, or you can mail them to our office here, or just drop them off at our office. In our office, right at the front entrance, there is a basket that you can put your plans in for review. Now, we only have 2 plan reviewers that review plans for the entire Jefferson County. And they don't just do food, they do hotels, they do swimming pools, pretty much any commercial property, they review it. So you can imagine how busy they are. Because there's only 2 of them, it's going to take a while to be approved. I think right now we are about a month behind on the review process. So just don't expect to, buy a food truck and start operating tomorrow, because it's probably not going to happen. You really need to submit plans as soon as you purchase a food truck, get those plans submitted. As soon as you've thought about starting to build a food truck, you need to submit the plans before you start building it, because you got to make sure you have the right equipment in there, and then it's approved by us and by the Division of Plumbing. So we're going to talk about what documents you have to submit. So these are going to be the 4 documents that you have to submit. If you have plumbing, you have to submit a plumbing application. The plumbing application is typically filled out by a master plumber. So whoever the plumber is doing all the plumbing, they're going to be filling out this application. And a lot of master plumbers already know this process. If they've worked with food trucks in the past or worked with commercial properties, they already know this process. So you have to submit that plumbing application.
I think we may have lost connection with Samantha. We will just hang on a second here to see if she's able to hop back on. And great questions, everyone. I've got a list here of all the questions that y'all have been asking, and we'll make sure to get to them at the end. Yeah, it looks like she's gonna sign back on.
Hey Claire, it's Janet hanging out in the background. I see Samantha's coming back on, so we'll let her get her presentation back up and we'll resume.
Great. So I think you're on mute, Samantha.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, can you see my screen?
No.
Okay, give me 1 second. Sorry, my computer just kicked me out and I don't know what is going on.
No worries, it happens to all of us.
All right. Okay, are we back?
We are back. Great.
Okay, I am so sorry. It just kicked me
No
out.
worries at all.
All right, so
I'll
going
just
back
say,
to
folks, if we do run past the hour, we will send you a link of the recording to this webinar afterwards. So if you have another appointment at 1, you're welcome to go to it. You'll get the recording afterwards, and we'll just keep on going with the presentation.
Okay, awesome. All right, yeah, sorry, we're already almost at that hour. Wow. So here are the 4 things that you have to submit to the health department. As I already said, the plumbing application filled out by the master plumber, the floor plan with all the required equipment. So you're going to have a floor plan filled out showing where all that equipment is. And we will review that to make sure you have everything. You have your hand sink, you have your three compartment sink. And then you're also going to submit a riser diagram. So this is done by a master plumber. This is basically how your pipes are laid out in your food truck, and this can only be done by a master plumber. So they will submit that. And then you also have to submit a menu. So we like to see a menu. We like to be able to see what food you're going to be cooking and what the hazards are. So those 4 items you will submit to the health department for approval. Once we approve it, we send those plans to the Division of Plumbing because they have to check the riser diagram and approve that. Once the Division of Plumbing approves it, they will send the master plumber a letter stating everything has been approved and you can start building your food truck or the way that you're supposed to be building it. Now, with the Division of Plumbing, they only have 1 person that approves plans for the Division of Plumbing. So for us, it might take a month to be approved. For them, it could also take another month. So it's a very long process, and that's why we always recommend getting everything submitted as soon as possible. So here's a quick example of the floor plan. It doesn't have to be this high tech. You can honestly just draw it with a piece of paper and pen, but as you can see, everything is labeled, and down here you can kind of see what each item is. So we have our hand sink, we have our 3 compartment sink, we have a a griddle, a range. So everything on here is labeled how it's going to be set up when you're operating. Now, another thing you have to put on your floor plan is the size of your freshwater tank and the size of your wastewater tank. So your wastewater tank has to be 50% larger. So we like to see what sizes you have on your floor plan. And then here are just some examples of some applications that you can use to help you draw it. But again, not required. You can draw it by hand. Just make sure it's legible and we can read it. This is an example of the plumbing application that the master plumber fills out. An example of the riser diagram that they will draw depending on how the pipes are laid out in your food truck. This is what the Division of Plumbing approves. And then once they approve it, they will send an inspector out once your food truck has been built. The inspector will come out and inspect the plumbing in person. So they will inspect it in person, make sure it's accordance to their code. And if it's approved, they'll give you this green approved plumbing sticker. We cannot do an opening inspection until you have this green approved plumbing sticker. Now, if you buy a food truck that already has this sticker, then you kind of can skip the process of submitting to the Division of Plumbing. If you already have this sticker, all we require you to submit is a floor plan because we still want to be able to see what the floor plan is because the floor plan that the equipment you have in there might be different from the previous owner. So we still want to see what equipment you're going to have inside. And then you just have to send us a picture of your green approved plumbing sticker. So you don't have to fill out the plumbing application. You don't have to fill out have a riser diagram if you already have the sticker. And if you're going to buy a food truck from someone that's already been in operation, more than likely they're going to have the sticker already. So it'll save you some time on getting your plans approved because it'll just have to go through us and not through the Division of Plumbing. So I just wanted to quickly talk about our Certified Food Manager program. This is only required for the self-contained mobile unit. There's 2 ways you can get your certificate. You can do it in person. If you go to this link here, we will be sending out this presentation afterwards, so you will have all these links. But if you go to this link here, you can sign up for our in-person course, or if you want to take it online, you can do that at this link as well. Our online course is done in both Spanish and English. And then in our in-person course, we can set up a translator if you need to. Both courses are going to be $35 and valid for 3 years. So you don't have to take the course again until 3 years later. Some restaurants, if you worked in a corporate restaurant, they require you to take ServSafe or another certified national program. If you have one of those national certificates like ServSafe, you do not have to take our course, but you do have to transfer that certificate over to us at the health department, and you still have to pay $35. So you basically send us a picture of your ServSafe certificate, pay $35, and then we will send you back a health department certificate. And again, at least one person on duty has to have the certificate. So if that person's not there, then someone else needs to have it. So the whole reason why I do what I do, and the reason we have all these processes is to prevent these foodborne illnesses. So I like to have these on here just so you can see, like, this is the reason what we do is to prevent all of these foodborne illnesses. If you ever have an employee that has one of these foodborne illnesses, you have to make sure you exclude them from working. They cannot come to work and they cannot return to work until they are cleared from a doctor. So just want to, and you also are required to report that if one of your employees has tests positive for one of these foodborne illnesses, you have to report that to the health department. I just wanted to briefly discuss some of our food safety, foodborne illness risk factors. So these are the top 5 reasons people get sick. These are going to be the top 5 priority or critical violations that causes foodborne illnesses. So the first one being poor personal hygiene. So if you're not washing your hands after you use the restroom, then you could cause norovirus or Hep A, and that can be spread into food, which if someone eats that food would then get that virus. Inadequate cooking, if you're not cooking your chicken to 165 degrees, that causes a foodborne illness. Improper holding temperatures, so cold food below 41 degrees, hot food above 135 degrees. You have to make sure you're holding those temperatures correctly. And then food from an unsafe source, you have to make sure your food is coming from a reputable supplier. So you can't be, your uncle that shot a deer in his backyard. You can't cut that up and serve that to customers. It has to come from an approved source. And then the last main risk factor that causes a foodborne illness is contaminated equipment. So if you cut a piece of chicken with a knife and then you use that same knife to cut a ready-to-eat sandwich, you're cross-contaminating that sandwich from all that bacteria that was in that raw chicken, and that can cause you to get sick. So you have to make sure your equipment is sanitized in between uses, or you use separate equipment for raw versus ready-to-eat food. So I have a few slides about avoiding critical violations, because these are the most important ones that cause you to get sick and will cause you to fail your inspection. And that's what we are trying to prevent. We don't want you to fail your inspections. So having an employee health policy, can't come to work sick, having an approved way to clean up vomit and diarrhea, having to be able to demonstrate food safety knowledge, and you do that with the certified food manager course. No bare hand contact with ready to eat food, so wearing gloves. If you serve food, you can't take it back and reserve it to someone else. And then proper date marking. So listeria can grow at refrigerated temperatures after 7 days. So you have to date mark your food for 7 days, and you can't use any food past that 7-day mark. And then food contact surfaces properly constructing and maintain, and having hot and cold running water. So all of these are critical or priority violations that we're trying to avoid. Here's a few more. Proper disposal of sewage. Hand sinks have to be properly constructed. Insect, rodent, animal protection in place. So keeping those screenings up to prevent those from coming in. Having toxic items properly stored and labeled. You don't want to mix up a spray bottle of water that you think is water and it's really bleach. That could be bad. And then having a consumer advisory. So if we actually have a sushi truck, food truck. They serve raw sushi. So they have to have some kind of consumer advisory on their menu stating that if you eat this, this is a raw item and eating it could potentially cause a foodborne illness. They have to have that advisory on their menu. All right, so wanted to discuss some of our commissary locations these are just a few in Louisville and right across the bridge. A commissary is basically a shared kitchen. So it is a big kitchen that has all the equipment needed. It has ovens, stoves, dishwashers. It has pots and pans, utensils, has everything you need to prepare food. And as food truck operators, you can rent out spaces at any of these locations to do batch cooking. So if you wanted to cater an event that has a lot of people, you could come here and batch cook a ton of food, cool it properly, reheat it. A lot of these, I know Chef Space, they have these huge walk-ins where you can keep your food there. So a lot of our food truck operators actually do work out of Chef Space and some of these other ones to do batch cooking and kind of cook for the whole week and then reheat it up at the commissary and serve out of the food truck. And if you want more information on our commissary guidelines, you can go to this link down here and read more about that. So our mobile truck waste disposal sites, these are going to be sites all around Louisville that you can dump your sewage tanks into. According to MSD, you cannot directly pour into any sewers. And the reason being, you know, if you're have a lot of cooking with a lot of fatty foods, you have a lot of grease, you're going to have all that buildup in your waste tanks. And if all the food truck owners in Louisville were pouring into the sewer, then that would cause a major backup. So the MSD is trying to prevent that from happening. So they have all these certified waste hauler sites around Louisville that you can go to and dump your wastewater into. And then we are about finished up here. I wanted to end with talking about our vendor permit and ID. So our vendor permit, you have to have this to vend in Jefferson County. This is not done through the health department, but it is a requirement. After you get your health permit, you have to get this permit. This is done through the Codes and Regulations Office. Their phone number is down here if you have any questions. If you go to this link, there's a lot of information there that tells you about the vendor permit and all of the requirements that you need to get that. So they don't typically do an inspection on your truck. That's what we do. But they make sure you have all the proper documents in place, making sure the truck is you have the registration for it and all of that. So once you get your health department permit, then you'll have to go and get your vendor permit and ID. All right, and then I just wanted to end with some contacts. So if you have any questions regarding a health permit, you can reach out to us at the health department or our plan review team. If you have any questions on the vending permit, you can reach out to the Codes and Regulations Office. And then if you have any questions on any plumbing, then you can reach out to the Kentucky Division of Plumbing with those. So those are on there for you. And then here is my information. If you have any questions about food trucks or you're ready to submit plans and you just want me to maybe review them, you can email me at this email address or give me a call on my cell phone. And I am more than happy to help you in any way that I can to get you up and running. So with that, I'll take it over to Claire. And if we have any questions in the box, I haven't really been monitoring it, but if we have any questions, then I can answer any of those.
Thank you so much for this presentation, Samantha. It was super informative. I've done those food handler certification courses and I learned a lot from you today.
Yeah.
Even having taken those. So this is wonderful information. I'm going to start with some questions that kind of came through during your presentation, and then I'll go into the chat box for any new questions that are put up.
Okay.
Question from Ashley about how long does it take to get your plans approved? Is there like a time frame? I know it kind of varies.
Yeah. So like I said, it's probably, if it goes through, if you have plumbing plans, it's probably going to take about a month for us to review our portion of it, the floor plan. Once we approve it, we send it off to the Division of Plumbing, and that could take another 3 to 4 weeks. So I've never seen anything take longer than 2 months, but I have seen it take about 2 months to be approved. Now, if your food truck already has plumbing and you don't have to get it approved by the Division of Plumbing. It's a little bit of a simpler process for us to look at those plans. So that could take anywhere from 2 weeks to a month for us to look at those, because our plan reviewers are just so busy reviewing everything that it just takes a little bit.
Great. Question from Lorena. Are you required to have all of the permits you mentioned posted during opening inspection? I imagine you're getting some of them during that open inspection, correct?
Yeah, so once you have that green sticker, you will schedule, and your food truck's, built, ready to go. You will schedule an opening inspector with, or an opening inspection with an inspector. That's when you bring your food truck to us, and that's, we'll do a quick inspection, making sure you have everything you need, you have test strips, your equipment is working, and then we will fill out all of the information for your permit. So that day you will walk away with kind of a temporary permit, but you can start operating after that. Once you also pay for your permit that day when we do that opening inspection. Now, a couple weeks later, we will actually mail you your nice big copy of your permit. That is what you will post up for everyone to see. So just those, the local permit, the state permit, you will post. Once you get your vending permit, you will also have to post that. If you have an alcohol license, if you end up doing that, you'll have to have that posted as well.
Great. And DeMarcus wanted to get some clarification around the difference between the food handler permit and then the food manager permit that's required, or which is required at all times, and just a little bit more clarification between the two.
Yeah, so there's going to be two types out there. There's actually probably more than just handler and manager. So we do not accept a food handler certificate. We only accept a food manager certificate. And that is just a local ordinance. Every county, again, is different. Every county might have their own course that you take. Every county may accept the national certificates like ServSafe, and some may not. In Jefferson County, we don't accept the handler. I'm not really sure the reason. I think just because the manager teaches you a lot more and goes into more depth of foodborne illnesses and the causes. So you just need to make sure whatever course you take is a manager. So if you take our course, that is a manager course, whether you do it online or in person. That is our course that we have created, and it is a manager course. The ServSafe courses. So ServSafe has probably a food handler certificate, but we wouldn't accept that. So you just have to make sure it's a manager certificate.
Great. This is an interesting question. Melissa asks, if you get inspected in another county while you're operating at an event, does that count as one of the 2 inspections per year, or how does that work?
Yes, it does. And we see that a lot. We have a lot of food trucks that, are permanent in a different county, and they come here, and we can inspect them because they're in our county. But it does count for your 2 inspections. So you just want to make sure it's really hard for us to see inspections in a different county. But if you keep that report in your truck, or if you have that placard posted from that county, theirs might look different, or they might not have it at all. But if you have the report and you're able to show it to us, then we can count that as one of your 2.
Okay, great. And another question, I had this too, based on a client of mine, where do beer trucks, or just in general, like beverage catering, fit into the 3 types of permits, or the different classifications you talked about?
So it kind of depends on what exactly they're doing. If they have dishes that they're washing, so some maybe beer trucks might do like a catering event at a wedding, and they might use real glassware. If they're doing real glassware, then they would have to have the self-contained mobile unit so that they can wash their dishes. If they don't want to do glassware and they're just pouring alcohol or any kind of drink into a disposable cup and selling that, You don't have to have any permit to do that. You can do that without a permit. But it just kind of depends on what they're selling. If the drink that they're selling is maybe a potentially hazardous drink, or if it's like a shelf-stable Coca-Cola products, you don't have to have any permit to do that. So kind of it's kind of a case-by-case scenario depending on what they're doing.
Okay. Let's see. And then you pretty much covered this, but if you're buying an existing food truck rather than building out, you would probably still need to submit that floor plan to you all, correct? And then if it has the plumbing sticker on, you're good to go. If not, you need to go through that step as well.
Yep. So if you have your green sticker, you just need to draw a floor plan for us so we can see your equipment and take a picture of your green sticker and send that into us. That is a lot quicker process because that'll probably can be approved in a couple weeks as opposed to a couple months. But just make sure you send that picture of the green sticker into us so we know that it's already been approved in the past.
Great. Y'all are asking some really good questions. These were during the presentation. I'm going to take a look at the chat now here. How do you find out what are acceptable public places to set up your food truck? So
in Jefferson County, as long as you have that vending permit, you can pretty much set up on the side of the road. Okay, let me start over. For a self-contained food truck, you can sit up on the side of the road as long as it is a public space, public parking. If there's meter, obviously you have to pay for that meter. If you are a restricted food cart, they do not allow the Codes and Regulations Office. They are the one that mandate this, not us, but you cannot set up in a street. You have to be on a sidewalk and you cannot be impeding traffic on that sidewalk. But typically, if you're not sure if you can set up in a place, I would reach out to the Codes and Regulations Office because they are the one that that kind of maintain that. And you also cannot set up at the waterfront. So the waterfront has their own permit or have their own process of allowing food trucks to operate there. If they have events like Thunder over Louisville, then you have to just kind of apply to set up there, and they approve it whether they allow food trucks to operate at waterfront. I think you have to get a permit through Metro Parks to set up on the waterfront. So that's completely different, but you can reach out to the Codes and Regulations Office about that.
Okay. And then with regards to batch cooking, if you are operating out of a commissary kitchen as your main space, is it okay to batch cook and then only take the amount you're serving that day to the food truck to sell and keep at a holding temperature?
Yeah, so that's exactly what commissaries are used for, cooking lots of food at once, and then you cool it down and then you have an event the next day. You need to reheat it up at the commissary, but then you can hot hold it on your food truck to serve. And you don't have to use, like if you have a brick and mortar store, so maybe you have a brick and mortar store and you want to open a food truck, that brick and mortar store can act as your commissary for the food truck.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a popular or a common situation for folks. LaTanya asking about getting the inspection done. I think that is listed on the slides previously that we'll send out here. And then how long do we have between the approval of plumbing and getting an actual inspection? Is there like a countdown of when they need to go for that, or can they just do it on their own timeline if they're still working on it?
So once your plumbing's been approved, if you need your plumbing to be inspected in person by the Division of Plumbing, you would just reach out to them as soon as your plumbing's approved and as soon as it's done. I think their turnaround time is very quickly, like they can come out like in a week's notice and inspect in person. Once you have that green sticker though, if you can immediately call us and schedule an opening inspection, and if we're available that day, we can do an inspection that day. Our hours are very flexible. You would just need to reach out to us and try to get something scheduled for that week or for whenever you're ready to get that opening inspection done.
Yeah. Let's see here. Someone was told by the ABC that you cannot sell alcohol from a food truck. Do you know about the rules and regulations around that? I mean, I have seen it done, so there may be some other requirements.
I've definitely seen that done too. It might depend on the county you're in. I have a contact with ABC that he he inspects food trucks. He's like a codes and regulations officer. So I'll reach out to him and try to get a clear answer on that.
Sure.
And I can send that out to you all to be sent out once I get a better answer for that.
Okay. Great. And then, yeah, just Taylor, to your point, we want to make sure this is all, accessible information for everyone, hence us kind of presenting this together today. And then you're welcome to reach out to me as a business coach, and I can connect you with Samantha or anyone at the health department. Samantha's also shared her information. So we do want to make sure that folks feel like they have all the information they need to get this started, because as we can see today, there's a lot to it, right? To get started with your food truck, and just having those resources to be able to ask questions along the way. All right. I think that gets the end of our questions here. Samantha, thank you so much. I know I'll be reaching out for questions. And thanks so much for sharing your information and your contact info as well, because that'll be super helpful.
Yeah. Anybody can reach out to me at any time, and I will help you the best I can.
Great. Thank you all so much. And there will be a survey at the end of this webinar, if you don't mind to take it and give us some feedback on the webinar today. Thank you all so much, and have a great rest of your Tuesday.